we learned today SUCCAH, Daf Yud Amud Aleph, 10a. And we learned the English is Bracha Bas Rabbi Yehuda. We are approximately 10 lines down. Okay, says the gemorah, it's a little bit of a new sukkah. Well, it's not a new sukkah, but a sukkah within a sukkah. So we discussed that the last Mishnah, that a sukkah under a sukkah is invalid, it's possible, and it's no good. So the Gemara asks, Kami yehei ben sukkah l'sukkah v'te'ah tachtayna psula. How much do you need between the two sukkahs in order for the bottom one to be possible? Omer Rav Huna tefach. How much space does there have to be between the top SUCCAH and the bottom SUCCAH for it to be possible? In other words, what happens if you have SUCCAH and you have straight away another layer of SUCCAH? Is that possible? Or you need a certain amount of space between the two? Says the Gemara, Kami b'sukkah l'sukkah. Amar Rav Huna, so Rav Huna answers, tefach, you need a tefach. As long as between the two layers of SUCCAH, there's a tefach, 10 centimeters, a hand breadth, then it's possible. Where is he getting this shear from? Where does he get the number tefach from? In other words, if it's less than a tefach, let's say there's two layers, but there are 5 centimeters between the two layers, so what's the din? Kosher. Why is it kosher? It's considered one SUCCAH. But once it's a tefach, it's possible. Why? Says the Gemara, Amar from tefach atashkema, tzinu ba'el, Tuma tefach. Ba'el Tuma tefach. We find that for something to be considered an oil, a tent, you need a tefach. The Tanya, what's going on over here? What's the principle of Tuma, of impurity, that you need a tefach, you need a height of a tefach on top of it to create what's called the oil, a tent, a separate zone, a separate area, different restrictions, different conditions apply. The Tanya, tefach burum tefach. If you have a piece of something, anything, piece of wood, a table, that's a tefach, right? A tefach, and the height of a tefach. So you've got this box that's 10 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters deep, and 10 centimeters high. Then that's enough of an area to be a mechitza, to be a barrier. And then what happens? Who cares if there's a barrier on top of it? So you've got a dead rat, and on top of it you've got this piece of wood that's 10 by 10 by 10. Then what happens? Maybe it's a Tuma. V'chaitis mipnei Tuma. So what does that mean? Once you've got 10 by 10 by 10, it's now chaitzets from the Tuma. That means maybe it's a Tuma means anything under that plank, anything else under that piece becomes tummy, becomes impure. Anything above that, that's good. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome. Okay? So if it's 10 by 10 by 10, it's big enough that it blocks the tumah going above it, and it keeps underneath. Anything else under that plank becomes tummy. Okay? So you've got like a shelf. Classic example. You've got a wooden shelf. It's 10 centimeters wide, and it's 10 centimeters high. It's above the area under, 10 centimeters above the shelf below. So anything above the shelf is going to be tar, it's pure. Anything below the shelf, along the whole shelf, is impure. But that's only if the shelf is 10 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters high. What happens if it's only 8 centimeters off the shelf above, below? If it's less than 10 centimeters high, it doesn't spread the tumah all the way under the thing. But it's not chayt, meaning now the tumah is bakei v'oila, the tumah shoots up, you've got this dead rat, it shoots up directly, anything directly above it, tomei. I mean, this principle is very important when it comes to, just so you should understand where it's relevant nowadays. Kohanim, if you're from the family of Kohanim, you check your DNA, or you've got a Messiah of the Kohen, you're not allowed to be in a room or in a building where there's a dead body. And you're not supposed to even you can't go over it, you can't fly over it. So let's say, right, if nowadays what they do, when they bury, they make sure that there's a tefach above it. There's a tefach, and then the tumah doesn't go up. So Chaim can walk over, But if there's no tefach on top, if it's just all the dirt comes falling down, then there's no tefach on top of it, there's no air, and then the tumah goes up. Problem is, can Kohanim fly? I know Chaim, when he leaves Israel, he doesn't fly out of Ben Gurion because there's tumah there. The airport, I don't know if they do it anymore, they used to fly over a graveyard, and the tumah going up, you can't fly, it goes all the way up till Shemayim, so you can't even fly 30,000 feet in the air, you're not allowed to fly over, so he used to fly out from Egypt. I don't know if he still does. If you're listening, have fun. So he used to go to Egypt, leave the country. Also, he saved $500 on a ticket to America, but that's besides the point. Okay, so that's the principle of Tuma. If it's tefach by tefach by tefach, if it's 10 by 10 by 10, then it's considered a proper mechitza, a barrier. If it's a barrier, the impurity, the tumah doesn't go up, and it spreads underneath. If it isn't a barrier, so the tumah does not spread underneath, but it shoots up. But there you see, you need a height of 10 to be considered a zone, a different area, to have its own significant special status, right? And therefore, by sukkah also, if it's above a tefach, that's considered, this is already oil, it's a different area, it's a different zone, it's not all part of the same area. Thank you very much.
Amen.
The water's great today. Okay?
Water's great. Thank you, Hashem.
Thank you, Hashem. So says the gemorah. All right, so that's where he gets his opinion from. And the little letter there seems to imply that that's the halacha. The little aleph, that's the halacha, that if the second layer of SUCCAH is less than 10 centimeters above the first layer of SUCCAH, it's kosher.
But you can't see between.
Huh?
You won't be able to see between this.
Of course you can. It's thin slats. You can see.
I want you to do that, sir, in a second.
Maybe we'll do
Not
it.
that I'm going to come
It's a
to
good
see.
idea. It's a great idea. Okay, says the gemorah. So that's the first opinion. That's the first opinion, how high the second layer of SUCCAH has to be. Rav Chisda, Rabba, Rav Huna, Amri, they argue. They say you need arba. You need 4 tefachim. Not 1 tefach, you need 40 centimeters. Anything less than 40 centimeters, that won't be considered a second sukkah. Why? We're going to see why. You never find an area less than 4 that's considered choshev. Take a look in Rashi. What's he talking about? I don't know if you can see Rashi. Literally, I don't know if I can see Rashi. I didn't bring my glasses today. But Rashi says, we'll try this out. It's the fifth wide line of Rashi.
Yeah.
Rashi says, anything below less than 4 tefach by 4 tefach, that doesn't have its own status of a place. In other words, something's not considered a rishus, its own domain, if it's less than 4 by 4. So if you have a house and you've got in there a little square box 3 by 3, so that's part of your domain. It can't be, that's Rosh Hashanah and the rest of it's Rosh Hashanah. It's public, it's private. No. If it's less than 4 by 4, it's not a rishus. That you got a stone, you don't have an area of land, a piece of land, whatever that means. Okay? Therefore, they say the height also has to be chashuv. For it to be considered a second sukkah, different SUCCAH, another layer of SUCCAH, another layer of leaves as opposed to the same layer, you need to have 4 tefach, 40 centimeters. Shmuel has a third opinion. Shmuel Amar Asara. Shmuel says, and there's another letter over there, that means we're passing like this also. Shmuel Amar Asara, you need 10. 10 tefach. When I ask my time of the Shmuel, why do you need 10? So Shmuel, simple answer. Kech sheira, kach psula. Just like you need 10 tefach in order for a sukkah to be kosher. If you sit in a sukkah that's only got 9 tefach, till schach, what's the rule? Pasul. The sukkah has to be 10 tefach. So if it's not a sukkah because it's not 10, it's only 9, so it's not enough of a sukkah to nullify the one underneath. Only if it's a kosher sukkah does it nullify the sukkah underneath. If it's 9, it's not kosher. And therefore the one underneath is kosher. But once it's 10, then that's a good sukkah now. If that's a good sukkah, the one underneath is a bad sukkah. That's why you need 10.
We're talking about the one on top is a good sukkah.
The one, if it's 10, the one on top is good. It's 10.
But it's not even a shallow.
That's a good sukkah, right? No problem. If
But
it's 10,
it's not even we said specifically.
question is if we're trying to work out the one underneath. For the one underneath
We
to be,
said, but 1 second. We said in the beginning of the parak. Was it the beginning of the parak? In the Mishnah?
we're still in the beginning of it.
No, in the Mishnah.
Yeah.
House is sukkah, so, tachas, oh, no, 1 second. Mishnah. No, we said if you build a sukkah on top of another sukkah,
Parcel.
it's puzzle.
So we're trying to work out now. You're right. If you put a sukkah under a sukkah, the bottom one is parcel. But what are the conditions of the sukkah on top in order for the one underneath to be parcel? That's what we want to know.
Makesha.
We need to know how high does that. So you got sukkah underneath and the sukkah on
But
top.
1 second. If you have less than, what do we say? How high?
So now we're saying it's got to be 10 tefachim. The sukkah on
1
top.
second. How high does the sukkah have to be? Forget double sukkahs.
10 tefach.
Okay.
A meter high. Sukkah has to be a meter high, otherwise you can't live there.
How many people can live, sit properly, sleep
In a sukkah that's 10 high?
In a sukkah that's 10 high.
1,000. You make it 1,000,000 miles wide. It can be as big as you want. We're talking about the height.
You're sitting like
Yeah,
this.
you're sitting like that. You crawl in, you sit like that. My kids do all the time. You're sitting on the floor. You put your pillows on the floor. They used to just throw some,
Hay.
throw some hay on the floor, and that's how they sat sometimes. So you don't need to have a high sukkah. In fact, in the time of the gemorah, it's an interesting point. I think it's important for people to realize this. They used to eat lying down. They didn't even sit down. They would literally lie down. So they lied on the floor. They lay down on the floor. How do you say that? They lay on the floor, and they put a pillow there, and the sukkah could be 5 high, 10 high. Huh? It's possible.
In and of itself.
You don't even need to be able to sit in the sukkah. As long as you can lie down, you need 40 centimeters, 50 centimeters? You're good. You don't even have to sit.
We're talking about a different time. Okay.
Times have changed. Yeah. I think times have changed. So it says the gemorah.
Let's see how that works out for you.
Shmuel Amar, here. Shmuel Amar, sorry, my time is short. Okay. Tanu Rabbanon.
1 second. 1 second. So, back to my question for a second. You can have a sukkah that's 10 high, but that's really the minimum.
10 high is the
That's really the
minimum.
minimum.
Exactly.
So, if
Once the top one is the minimum, once the top one is kosher, the bottom one's parcel.
of course. So then,
Right.
why are we?
But if the top one's not kosher, the top one's only 9, the top one's 5, then the bottom one's kosher.
Okay, then why are we even
That's good.
discussing this?
That's good. We want to know how high. That's a machlekes. It's a machlekes. If the top one, according to Shmuel, it has to be 10 to be considered parcel. But according to the other shitas, even if it's a tefach high, the bottom one's parcel. If you put 2 layers of schach, nafka, you put your lats down, right? And then you want to have more schach there. You've got like your pergola, and that's your schach. You played around with it, you moved it, that's your schach. Now you decided, you know what, it doesn't give you enough shade from the sun. You want to have another layer of schach. So what do? You put more schach down.
But that's not a second sukkah.
But that schach, hold on, but on top of your pergola, for whatever reason, you've got metal beams, 10 centimeters above it. So you lay down more schach on top of those metal beams. So you've got your slats here, what do you call it? Slats. You got your slats here, then you got metal beam, and 20 centimeters above that, you put more schach.
But that's not.
Is your sukkah kosher? Machlekes.
1 second, but that's not what we're discussing.
That's exactly what we're discussing.
That's not what we're
Is that considered another sukkah? It's not a kosher sukkah? It's a partial sukkah because it's less than 10. But according to the first opinion, once it's a tefach, according to the Funah, if it's a tefach high, that's considered a sukkah. It's not a kosher sukkah. It's not a technical halachic.
No one's sitting.
You can't sit in it. It's not kosher. It's nothing. It's 10 centimeters high. Your mice can crawl in there, right? Parcel, according to the Funah.
The top one.
No.
No, the bottom one.
Of course the top one's possible. It's not 10.
Right.
But even the bottom one's possible because it's sukkah taka sukkah.
No, I thought we said though that if it's less than 10,
That's good to Shmuel. Oh, that's the machlekes. Shmuel says you need 10. Rafuna says you don't need 10. It's enough if it's 1. You don't need 10 tefachim. It's enough if it's 1 tefach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Good kasha. We got it. Tan Rabbana. Oh, it says the rabbis. So Tanan. It says in the Mishnah. Sorry. We're in the last narrow line, Tanan, or third last narrow line. Rabbi Yehuda, said Rabbi Yehuda, main diur b'lerech tzedek sheira. If people don't live in the one on top, then the one underneath is kasha. All right, shalom. So what does that mean? Mayan diurim. What does it mean if people don't live there? Ilem diurim mamish. If it means people don't actually live in the one on top, otu diurim kogami. Does the fact that people live there, is that what makes it possible kosher? In other words, the implication of Rav Yehuda is that your second sukkah, the one underneath, it depends on if people live upstairs. It doesn't matter the structure of the sukkah on top. It doesn't matter how high it is, how wide it is. What matters is the people live there. Are people actually living there? They're eating, they're sleeping. Welcome. So, says the gemorah, it doesn't mean that people live there. So what does it mean if endured, if it's not an apartment? Diur mamish. We don't care if people actually live there. What do we care about? We care about if it's royal dira, if you could live there. That's what Rav Yehuda means. If you could live in the one on top, it's possible. If you can't live in the one on top, it's kosher. Veichidami. What does it mean if you could live there? He's trying to prove like Shmuel. Veichidami, delay gavaya sarah. If it's not 10 tefachim high, you can't live there. And if you can't live there, then the bottom one's kosher. That's what Rabbi Yehuda is coming to tell me. So according to this opinion, Rabbi Yehuda is telling me, what's the height of the sukkah? What does the height of the upstairs, the second floor sukkah have to be for it to be considered the one underneath parcel? The one underneath the only parcel, if the one on top is 10. If you could live there, if it's 10, then the one underneath parcel. But if it's less than 10, it's kosher. Michlal, if that's the opinion of Yehuda, so we can deduce from this that the Tanakama, the first opinion of the Mishnah, is the opposite. Michal, the Tanakama says, psula. Even if it's less than 10, the one upstairs is, even if it's less than 10, the one upstairs is for sure parcel, it's 9. But even then, the one underneath is parcel. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda says the one underneath will be kosher. Michlal, from that we can, the implication is, according to the Tanakama, the first opinion of the Mishnah is that if it's less than 10, if it's 9, the one underneath is kosher. All right. So that's going to be a big kasha. That's a question on who? On Shmuel. Shmuel said that if it's less than 10, the one underneath is kosher. Right? Turns out that's good lefir Yehuda. That's great lefir Yehuda in the Mishnah. But the Kunta Chachamim and Lechari paskin like the Tanakama the Chachamim. Kunta Chachamim, if it's less than 10, it's still possible. Only Kunta Yehuda is a kasha. So Kunta according to Chachamim, according to Tanakama, it's possible. And Shmuel says it'll be kosher if it's less than 10. That's your kasha on Shmuel. What happens if the second floor sukkah is less than 10? Shmuel says if it's less than 10, the downstairs is kosher. But the Mishnah implies from Rabbi Yehuda that according to the Tanakama, if it's less than 10, it's possible. So Kiyasir of Dimi Amar Rava, when Rav Dimi came, they said in Marava, they said in the Holy Land of Israel, that's not what Rabbi Yehuda means. What Rabbi Yehuda means is the following. If the downstairs sukkah, the SUCCAH isn't strong enough to hold up the upstairs sukkah, pillows and blankets, kshera, then it's kasha.
You mean, in other words, if it's not a thing.
In other words, if you just put thin leaves on your first, between the two sukkahs, you have thin leaves, and it's not even strong enough to hold up pillows, then it's kasha. Michlal, so what does the Tanakama hold? Michlal Tanakama Sava, even if there's nothing you could put on top of it, right? It's still gonna be, even if you can't put pillows, it's still possible. Okay? So the Gemara says, what's going to be the difference? If you can put in Kirayim Chsosais, but the SUCCAH bends, it's not really good, and therefore, no one would do it really, but it's physically, technically possible. That's going to be the nafkamina between these two opinions. All right. Are we going to have time to go into the Mishnah? Hold on a minute.
We have 3 minutes.
One second. Okay, so we're going to start the Mishnah. It says the Mishnah. Pirei Saleh Sadin. You put a sheet on top of your SUCCAH. You throw a blanket, you throw a sheet over your leaves, over the SUCCAH. Why? To give you protection from the sun. Or you throw a sheet under the SUCCAH. Why? You don't want things to fall from the SUCCAH. You don't want leaves to fall into your soup. You don't want eggs to fall into your soup. So you put like a net underneath the sheet. Or sheperes al gabe a knife, or you put a sheet on top of a knife for beauty reasons. Psula. What's it in all these cases? It's possible. So what's a knife? You have a bed with 4 posts, and you put a sheet over it. So you've got like a nice flat sheet on top. Falls down the sides, 4 bedposts, you put a sheet on top, and that's on top of your bed. And you're not doing it so the leaves don't fall in your soup. You're doing it when you sleep to keep the mosquitoes out, whatever it is. Well, actually, the Rush says you're doing it for beauty. That's how they made the beds look pretty. They had a thin sheet on top of the beds. Says what's the din? Psula. I guess it was a big thing in those days. I don't know why it's no longer a big thing. People no longer put sheets over their beds. Maybe it's for mosquitoes, maybe it's for beauty. Rashi says it's for beautiful.
Have you ever?
It was a beautiful
You're in
thing.
the sleep business.
I'm in the sleep business. I should know this, right?
1 second. There are some beds, special princess beds.
Right, they all have
that
right.
have.
But no one else does it. It's very rare. Avo, let's finish the Mishnah once we're here. Avo peiresu al gabi naklite amita. You can't put it on the naklite amita. So what's the difference between naklite amita and a regular bed? So when you have a bed and there's 2 posts, not 4 posts, not in each corner, but the head of the bed and the bottom of the bed, in between the right side and the left side, you have 1 post on each side, and you throw a sheet between these 2 posts. So basically the sheet's going to look like a V, right? Because there's nothing holding up the corners. You just go like a tent. That over your bed is kosher. Why? Because you don't have a tefach on top. The sheet, if you pull a sheet between 2 pieces, it's gonna, you take a sheet, you hang it up like this, it's gonna hang down. The edges of the bed keep the sheet from from collapsing completely. So it takes like an inverted V shape. In that case, it's kosher. Why? Because you don't have a tefach on top. That's how Rashi understands it. Rashi says, "She'ein ela shnayim v'nyetzim be'emtza mit." You've got 2 posts. They come out the middle of the bed, one on the top, one on the bottom. Neisten klusnum is there, and poison less sudden. You put a beam. This is how Rashi explains. I don't know if you need it, but you put a beam between these 2 posts. There's a beam, a plank, whatever, and you throw a sheet over that. Now the sheet's going to hang down. So if the sheet's hanging down, mishum de'en lagag reichav tefach lemalo loy mikra ayal. Says Rashi, since you don't have the top of the sheet 10 centimeters, it's not considered an ayal like we discussed before with Tuma. It's not considered a roof. It's not considered a makom chashiv, and therefore it's not going to be possible sukkah. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.